Welcome back to Othello. If you're looking for Act 1 or an introduction to Othello, please go ahead and check my playlist. Otherwise, I would like to start in on Othello Act 2. So in William Shakespeare's Othello Act 2 Scene 1, you get some of the same characters you've seen back in Act 1, such as Othello and Desdemona. You also get Iago and Rodrigo, who are looking to discredit Othello. But you also get some newer characters. We haven't seen much of Cassio, and we have a new character called Emilia, who happens to be Iago's husband. Since we're now on Cyprus and not in Florentine, you're also going to get some new characters such as a voice, a few gentlemen, and a character by the name of Montano. So what happens in Act 2? Well, Othello's going to tell everyone that the Turkish fleet has been defeated, that Iago persuades Rodrigo that Desdemona's in love with Cassio in order to inspire jealousy, which is a major theme throughout this play. And Iago lets Rodrigo to agree to start a fight with Cassio while he's on the night watch that evening. So let's start with Act 2, Scene 1 and its summary. Now we come to find out that the Turkish fleet is actually destroyed by a storm, but all of the characters have arrived safely in Cyprus. We also see that Emilia, Iago's wife, has arrived, and he dislikes the courteous way Cassio greets Emilia. After all, Iago is very mean, unnecessarily mean towards women, and Cassio is very forgiving towards women. He's very nice towards women. Othello is overjoyed to be reunited with Desdemona. He left Desdemona in the care of Iago and his wife Emilia, and as she arrives to Cyprus, he's happy that he has won the day in Cyprus, and now here is his wife to help him celebrate. Iago persuades Rodrigo to provoke Cassio into losing his temper in the hope of discrediting him. Remember, Iago's not just in this play to discredit and get rid of Othello and Desdemona's marriage. He's mad at Othello in the first place because Cassio has surpassed him in becoming a lieutenant. So he also wants revenge because Cassio has gotten a promotion and Iago has not. Now, Iago reiterates his desire to have revenge on Othello and Cassio. He suspects them both of making him weaker, of cuckolding him. Now, when we look at Iago's misogyny, he does not seem to understand women, or at the very least, outwardly, he does not like women. Now, as they wait for Othello to arrive, Iago and Desdemona start talking, and Iago portrays all women, whether beautiful and ugly, whether smart or foolish. He portrays every woman as generally deceptive and sex-starved. But he also says that a woman with perfect virtue would be boring. Now, Desdemona defends women against him, though she's clearly amused by Iago's personality towards women. Now, Iago expounds the prejudices against women and female sexuality that he'll later use to manipulate Othello. Now, given the comic tone of his banter with Desdemona, however, it's hard to tell how he really feels about women. So we haven't heard much from Cassio in Act 1, and here we finally get to meet the character. Cassio has a very polished, courtly way of speaking, especially when he's talking to ladies. As he speaks of Desdemona, for example, he says that she excels the quirks of blazoning pens, and he calls her the divine Desdemona. Now, Cassio and Desdemona are friends. They are quite courteous to each other, but Cassio is not in love with Desdemona. And as Iago finds out later, he has no love for her, but he does have much respect for Desdemona. So it is with much irony that Cassio is charged as being Desdemona's lover. Now, Othello sees Cassio as a model Florentine with all poise and polish, which is something that Othello would want to be, but he thinks that he's not. He's not from Florentine, and he is of a different race, and so he would hope that he could pass as a Florentine gentleman someday, but he doubts that he can, so he looks up to Cassio for that. Now, Othello's insecurities mean that Cassio has been promoted over Iago, but it also leads Othello to hold Cassio at a distance. So taking a look at Iago's misogyny, and now that we have two female characters, both Desdemona and Iago's wife Emilia here, we look at women in this particular act. Although Iago is married, he does not have as favorable an impression of women as, say, Cassio does. Matter of fact, he says that women are wildcats in your kitchens, saints in your injuries, and devils being offended. He even declares that they rise to play and go to bed to work. Now, Iago's perception of women as being deceptive, dominating, and lusty influences are the way he portrays both his wife Emilia and Othello's wife Desdemona. Iago is also able to convince other men not to trust women, that they are anything but what they seem. So then we get to the question, when is Iago being honest? When can we trust what he says to us as the audience, and when can we know that he's lying? Well, he's very dishonest to the other characters in the play of Othello. To Othello, he is extremely two-faced. He told us in his soliloquy in Act 1, "I hate the Moor," and that he's only with him and supporting him so that he can serve his turn upon him. This suggests that Iago is only with Othello at this point to seek revenge upon him. Iago is also particularly dishonest with Rodrigo. He jokes in his soliloquy that he makes my fool my purse. Now this implies that Iago is using Rodrigo for money instead of helping him to win Desdemona's hand. Now the only way in which we can see Iago as honest is through his soliloquies to the audience. It's here that he reveals his true insidious nature. It's in these asides that Shakespeare shows Iago's evil intent and the true nature of his dishonesty. Now, Iago uses the trust that Othello, Cassio, and Rodrigo have in him to manipulate and to deceive them. So by the end of Act 1, Scene 3, we get his honesty. He reveals his plan to the audience to corrupt and to destroy the others' lives, suggesting that Cassio and Desdemona are having an affair, after some time to abuse Othello's ear that he's too proper with his wife. Now, Iago's dishonesty is a key feature on his manipulative and evil nature. So when we look at the honest Iago, when you have him talking to others, he's not that honest. When he says to Cassio, "But 1 cup, I'll drink for you," it seems like he's toasting him, like he respects him. He wishes good for Cassio, when we know he doesn't. And he also says, "What, man, 'tis a night of revels, the gallants desire it." We want Cassio to go out and have a good time, when in fact you know Iago is not supportive. To our new character Montano, he says, "You see this fellow that has gone before? He's a soldier fit to stand by Caesar and give direction, and do but see his vice. 'Tis to his virtue a just equinox. The one as long as the other, 'tis pity of him. I fear the trust Othello puts in him, on some odd time of his infirmity will shake this island." And he also says, "I do love Cassio well, and would do much to cure him of this evil, but hark what noise." To Othello, we have Othello saying, "Touch me not so near, I'd rather have this tongue cut from my mouth than it should do offense to Michael Cassio. Yet I persuade myself to speak the truth, shall nothing wrong him. More of this matter I cannot report, but men are men, the best sometimes forget. Though Cassio did some little wrong to him, as men in rage strike those that wish them best, yet surely Cassio, I believe, received from him that fled some strange indignity, which patience could not pass." Again, don't trust what Iago is saying unless he's by himself and talking to the audience in a soliloquy or an aside. We have to trust what his thoughts are. We cannot trust what he's saying to the others. Again, as he's setting up in Act 2 to try to get Cassio into trouble, he says to Cassio, "I am an honest man. I thought you had received some bodily wound. There is more sense in that than in reputation. Reputation is an idle and most false imposition, oft got without merit, and lost without deserving. You have lost no reputation at all, unless you repute yourself such a loser." He also says to Cassio, "You or any man living may be drunk. At a time, man. I'll tell you what you shall do. Our general's wife is now the general. So may say so in this respect, for that he hath devoted and given up himself to the contemplation, mark, and denotement of her parts and graces. Confess yourself freely to her. Importune her help to put you in your place again. She is of so free, so kind, so apt, so blessed a disposition. She holds it a vice in her goodness not to do more than she is requested." Again, here Iago is trying to convince Cassio to go talk to Desdemona, be alone with her for a while, so he can tell Othello they've been alone. Moving on to Act 2, Scene 3, we've got some more summaries here as Iago has been working his words with people like Montano, Othello, Cassio. We now get to see some of the actions being done. Iago gets Cassio to drink a bit, knowing he cannot hold his liquor at all, and he also tries to get Cassio's feelings about Desdemona. But as we find out, Cassio's feelings are innocent. He's not in love with her. So Iago hopes to cause a quarrel between Cassio and Rodrigo. After all, he's now convinced Rodrigo that Cassio is in love with Desdemona. Iago wants to see Cassio discredited through this so he might take Cassio's place as lieutenant. And then, of course, Cassio has no respect for Rodrigo. He only wants him for his money. So Cassio fights with Rodrigo because Iago has taken Rodrigo's money and told him to go fight Cassio. Now, Montano tries to hinder Cassio, but Cassio ends up injuring him instead. Now, all of this fighting is going to wake Othello, who comes down to figure out what has happened. Montano tells what he knows of it all, and he doesn't know all of Iago's dishonesty, so Iago's going to fill in the rest, making sure to fictionalize his part in it all. Because Cassio has injured somebody, he is being stripped of his rank, and I'll leave Cassio and Iago alone. So then Iago tries to convince Cassio, don't worry about it, reputation means little. He suggests talking to Othello's wife Desdemona. Maybe he can get her to vouch for him with Othello and speak good things about him. And this will help Iago get the impression across that Desdemona and Cassio are together. Iago then gives a soliloquy to the audience about knowing that Desdemona will speak for Cassio and that he will be able to turn that against them both. So we have jealousy as being one of our themes. Another one of our themes here is the word honesty. Honest emerges as a key word in this particular scene, Act 2, Scene 3. It's a term laden with irony, and it's a constant reminder of the dramatic irony inherent in Iago's dealings. None of the characters in the play have any idea of Iago's plans and evil intentions. Now, Othello and Cassio are especially innocent of this knowledge. They trust Iago. The audience knows exactly what Iago's up to, however, and they're able to see his deceptions for what they are. And so his words will interest the audience because of how much dramatic irony they're laden with. Now, there's also curiosity to find out whether Cassio and Othello will come to know as much as the audience does about Iago's deviance. You, as the audience member, know how dishonest Iago is, and you wonder, are these guys ever going to figure him out? And so the word honest in Scene 3 draws attention to how Iago's motives are hidden from the characters on stage. So now we have this juxtaposition where we see Cassio's flawed honor and courtliness and Iago's manipulativeness and deceptiveness. We were looking at Cassio as being a very courtly, heroic, honest type of guy at the beginning of Act 2, and by the end of Act 2, he has been seen as being deceptive, as a fighter, aggressive, everything that Iago actually is. They seem to have been juxtaposed here, where we're going to trust and like and honor Iago and not Cassio. Now, Cassio is full of honor when it comes to women and the ideals of a courtier as well, and he stands in especially sharp contrast to Iago when Iago speaks in Scene 1 lustfully of Desdemona. Now, Iago says he's a soldier fit to stand by Caesar, and the illusion of Caesar stating the fact that he knows Cassio's true quality. This man is a good soldier and a hero, but he strikes gold when he figures out Cassio's weakness for drink. He says he'll be as full of quarrel and offense as my young mistress's dog. Now, Iago's metaphor shows that he knows how liquor can separate even the best man from himself, and his metaphor reinforces his perceptiveness, that idea of turning something light into darkness. Now, reputation is also a theme in the book that obviously holds some resonance for Cassio. Iago also knows the importance of reputation, which is why that he makes sure people see his reputation as honest before he even does anything. However, when he talks to Cassio, he says reputation is a most idle and false imposition. Now, this statement is meant as a false consolation to Cassio, but is certainly filled with great irony coming from Iago. Reputation in this story is always of concern when individuals are involved. We also start looking at the good versus evil theme in the play. And so Cassio is so grieved that his reputation has been hurt. He sees fit to find a villain in all that has happened. He understands that he's not the one who should be to blame, so he's wondering what kind of evil is around. And ironically, Cassio misses the identity of the real devil in this situation, who is Iago. Now, devil also becomes a key word in this play along with honesty as people try to seek out what is poisoning everyone. So you're going to see this mentioning of honesty and devilishness, the good versus evil being a major theme in the play. And of course, there's a great deal of gray area in there as Iago is very honest to us, but he is the evil villain that is in the play. Now, of course, not everybody else is heroic. Everybody else has to have some sort of flaw. No one in this play is entirely deserving of the label of good. Lastly, we're going to be looking at the ideals of setting. We started in Venice with the Florentines in Act 1, where the Duke tells us to leave to Cyprus. So we went to Cyprus in Act 2. Why did we change the setting? Well, Cyprus is kind of a halfway house between the civilized Venice and the barbaric and foreign East. So it might signify the inner conflict Othello faces between civilized self and jealous self. Venice at this time would have been a huge city, very much populated with the Renaissance. It's just the barely foundations of the Industrial Revolution as it starts in. Whereas Cyprus is going to be a very rural, agricultural area, not many people living, not a lot of a sense of art, more of a sense of uncivilization. The medical theory of foul humor is believed to be affected by heat at the time in Shakespearean times, and so the Shakespearean audience would have believed Othello is being adversely affected as he went further south and it became hot. Now, Cyprus also has a military base. So when we get to Act 2, we're now full on in our military and the soldiers have their own bearings, so the transgressions are going to be dealt with in a military fashion. This also allows the opportunity to see characters out of familiar environment and therefore being less constrained by the usual codes of behavior as they would have been in Venice. It also allows for emotions to intensify. So there is a storm that is keeping the Turks away and they actually ruin their ships. Is there a significance of a storm in Act 2 and how does it act as a metaphor? Well, the storm is usually considered a symbol of unrest, and it foreshadows trouble about to be seen in most stories, and it works the same way in Othello. Now, the storm marks the end of the peaceful part of the play. It's an act of fate, marking the end of the external threat, so no more attack from the Turks, but it also starts the internal threats from Iago. It also signifies Othello's soon-to-be-seen volatile and destructive nature, which contrasts with Desdemona's calm and virtuous character. Now, we might also consider the storm to represent Iago himself, to be a metaphor for his violent desires. As it continues working up more and more, we see Iago enacting his plan further and further. Now, Iago arrives to the island first, signifying he's going to be in charge of this Cyprus setting. And the storm is going to mirror the chaos that we saw in the very beginning of Act 1, Scene 1, where Iago is getting very upset about being overpassed from being a lieutenant, and we see Brabantio very upset by the marriage of Desdemona and Othello. We also want to consider Cyprus is the birthplace of Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love and passion. And boy, is there a lot of passion that's going to be coming throughout the rest of the play of Othello. Thank you so much for stopping by to learn more about Act 2 of William Shakespeare's Othello. Again, if you'd like to go see the introduction of Act 1, please go back to the playlist. And why don't you leave a note down in the comments if you'd like to learn some more about Othello and let me know what it is that I've missed. Thanks so much for stopping by. Please subscribe.